Patrick Parrish and I met through Instagram only to find out we had far more in common than we even realized. As an art gallery owner, Patrick and I discuss how real estate plays a role in his business, the artists he represents, the items he sells, which not only consists of art but furniture as well as the watches from within his secret watch shop that's certainly meant to be found. We chat about art versus design, which was wonderful, and our love for Asheville, North Carolina, even though he's based in New York City. Let's get to it. I'm your host, Wesley Smith, and you're listening to the Standard Age Podcast. Good to see you.
Good to see you. How have you been? You've been busy in the house and everything.
Yeah. I mean, you could have ended the list there and it would have been enough work.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. What's the watch show? Not Worn and
Wind Up Watch Fair.
Wind Up Watch Fair. Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. How hard is it to do that?
How hard is it to do it?
Like if I wanted to do a booth of vintage watches there, does that happen or is it all new stuff?
You could totally do that. Eric Wind has a booth there.
Right. That's what made me think it was okay, but I didn't know if he got special dispensation being a celebrity, watch celebrity.
I can't speak to that.
That could be on their website. I couldn't see anywhere to apply.
So funny you should ask, because I was just emailing them this morning about Chicago and New York, et cetera, et cetera. So if you would like me to introduce you guys, I would be more than obliged.
That would be awesome. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. By the way, I am terribly sorry I didn't make it to the gallery to see you last weekend. It was nutty. I was never even in that part of town.
It's fine, man. I mean, I would have loved to showed you some new stuff and showed you. We have a Stefan Sagmeister show up right now, a painting show.
Right.
You know him, but you should Google him, and you should definitely watch his TED Talk on sabbaticals.
Okay.
And he thinks, I think it's every 7 years, it could be 6 years, everyone should take a sabbatical. And he was infamous for he's at one of the most he's closed, I think he's totally closed it now, but one of the most successful marketing branding agencies, design agencies in the world. I mean, he's
wow.
And he shuts it down. And when you mean shuts it down, it's shut down for 1 year. No client talk. I mean, there's nothing.
No way. That's crazy.
And all the employees and everything. And they do cool stuff during that, but nothing related to their clients.
Okay. Gotcha.
Very good TED Talk about, figuring out what's important, in your life and in your work, and how you come out of this. You think you lost a year, but you actually gained it. It's like his business, every year he did it, this business went up, 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 up.
Really?
Yeah. So
wow. I definitely want to check that out.
And he also did a movie on happiness, which he did during one of his sabbaticals. So yeah, that's also interesting to check out.
Sweet. I appreciate you sharing that. I think I'll definitely delve into that maybe sometime next week, because the TED Talks or anything like that, like I usually watch that kind of stuff on the treadmill at the gym.
Yeah.
Yeah, just because it's like I don't care about whatever reality television they're airing or music video they're playing, so, and yeah, that stuff just makes for great entertainment for me while I'm running on the treadmill. Because if nothing else, it's like it serves as like business motivation too for me to get off the treadmill then and go back to work.
Absolutely. I mean not the treadmill, but the pandemic and walking 4.5 miles to and from work.
Sure.
I never listened to a podcast in my life. I didn't even have a pair of headphones. I swear to you. And my wife gave me a pair, and I started listening to podcasts, and that's how I found you. That's how I found. I've listened to every single watch. It's a lot of hours.
Right.
Like basically a year and a half of not using the subway and going to work I just kept going to work because I could.
Right.
Small business owner, you could still go to work.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I've learned so much in that time that I used to just walk and think to myself, that's productive too. But podcasts have really opened up a whole new, world for me.
Sure.
Amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm one of the sickos that I'll even lift weights to a podcast.
Well, it's amazing that how much now I know how much work goes into one because I was on Risk Check podcast and they did the video and everything. It was
Sure.
like it's a lot of work and a lot of editing, a lot of time you guys put into this. So I'm very respectful and appreciative of all the hard work all the podcasters do.
Well, I appreciate the recognition. Yes, it is a lot of work. I have learned over 107 episodes or whatever I've done
Wow.
somewhat to edit myself in the moment. And, the sacrilegious thing to do during a podcast is talk over one another. So it just makes editing a nightmare. So, yeah, I try to shut up as much as possible and give you the platform that you deserve. So, um, but yeah, actually, with that said, how does one become an art dealer?
How does one? Well, first of all, you go to art school, try to be an artist, and fail at it, and then you understand artists and how they work, and you understand what they need. And I think that's the easiest. That's not the way all people get into art dealing, but I know a lot of dealers that that's how they get into it because they love, if you can't sell your own work, why don't you try to sell someone else's work? And that's what I've done. And I think being an artist really helps a lot
Mm-hmm.
because,
Mm-hmm.
as I said before, I understand what they want, what they need, what they expect, and what how hard it is to be an artist. I mean, it's like being the best at anything, but people think, oh, artists make so much money. It's like, yeah, and actors make so much money too. But do you know what percentage of them like are successful? Like tiny, I mean, 1/2 of 1%, so anytime I can help an artist or a designer quit their day job and be able to make furniture or art or paintings all day, that's very satisfying. I mean, I love to sell stuff. I like to make money, but I love to help artists be able to, kind of fulfill their dreams and be able to like stop being the barista and just make art full time. And it's been a lot of cases I've done that and it's felt really good.
That's amazing, man. Yeah, and I think you appreciate having been an artist yourself, obviously. So I've said it time and again on this podcast. Like I have what's called creative vomit, where it's like it just lives in my head until it's made, and then when it's made, thank God I can, you know, get it out of my brain and never think about it again.
Yeah.
So you're gonna understand that better than anybody, really, with regards to selling that product for them because that has probably been living in their brain for God knows how long, and it's a load off. It really is.
I totally agree. I know what you're talking about to an extent, but as an artist, I felt like I knew people when I went to grad school. I knew people that if they didn't make art, they were going to die. And I
Right.
don't mean like, oh, they were going to feel bad. They were going to die, like either kill themselves or go crazy.
Mm.
And I was not one of those artists. I felt lucky not to be one of those artists, but it's that you have to make it. You have to get it out. And until it's out, it is going to haunt you. So
Yeah.
it's a blessing and a curse to have that because people that have that get shit done.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, that's probably a large reason why most artists do drugs.
Yeah.
Like, and I mean, that's a sweeping statement, obviously, but like,
Well, yeah, but it helps them get out of that that head and
mm-hmm.
get to a different place where they can kind of expand those thoughts and maybe realize, every every idea you have during that time is not the best, but
Mm-hmm.
plenty of great ideas have come out of that.
What was your medium when you were creating?
Photography.
Oh, cool.
And when I say photography, I went to the School of Art Institute of Chicago, and at the time, photography and video were the hottest departments. The painting department, literally, we made fun of, and that's a joke now because all those guys, all those jokers, are making way more money than us. But it's it was an interesting time to be at the photo in photography, and I was using. I mean, what I was doing was more art based, like installation work and giant things and manipulating the photographs and cutting them up and nailing them and just doing crazy. It wasn't like, trying to make the perfect print, and
Mm.
it wasn't that at all. It was like it was like painting with silver, and everything was constructed. I made all my frames, and
Yeah, it almost sounds like mixed media, almost.
I think you would call that then, you would say that then, but we didn't really. Yeah, it was, you wanted to be a photographer at that time, if mix. Yeah, but it was definitely, yeah, mixed media. Yeah.
What year did you graduate from there?
Oh God, so long ago.
Okay.
In 92.
Okay, God, you're much older than you look.
I'm very old. I'll be 58 this year.
No way.
No.
Wow. Yeah, that's shocking. Well, you have Patrick Parrish Gallery, which obviously is the eponymous label of your gallery there. And you are at, well, I know your address, 50 Lispenard, but like, what is the history of this gallery? How long have you been in that space, and why this gallery?
Oh, let's see. Let's start at the beginning. I always wanted to move to New York. I had a bunch of failed attempts to move to New York, because it's
Mhm.
hard to move to New York. And then finally it stuck, and I got here. And pretty soon after that, I had a business partner, and we opened up a gallery on 22nd Street called Mondo Cane. And we were there for 4.5 years, um, through 9/11 and all that, which was crazy. And we would have stayed there longer, except they sold the building and tore it down to build a condo. So we had to move, and I ended up finding a space on Duane Street, across from Duane Park in Tribeca. One of the most beautiful, it's always voted one of the most beautiful blocks in all of New York.
Yeah.
We had to work hard to get it, but we got it. And we also, my business partner at the time was having William Massey, who's an architect, very interesting architect. He was building a house for him. So he basically kind of did not gratis, but design the gallery. And it was great. It had folded puzzle piece steel floors and these incredible steel pivoting windows, and a
Wow.
lucite iron staircase that had almost 10,000 individual pieces of lucite in it. It was a
Holy sh-
beautiful, crazy space. And we were there. Well, the gallery was there for 10 years. My business partner and I parted under not good terms. He had to leave or go to jail. So he left, and I took it over. And that's when it became Patrick Parrish Gallery.
Got
And so
it.
then I moved here. So I was there 10 years. And again, they were going to redo the building, and the rent got crazy. So I looked for another space. Went through this guy, Jonathan Travis, who's gotten, if there's now 50 galleries where I am. I was his first gallery client, and in the last 10 years, he's probably had at least 40 or 50. He's been responsible for 40 or 50 of the galleries that have moved to Tribeca. So he's really turned this area of Tribeca into the art hub of New York.
So he's a real estate agent, I'm
Real estate
assuming.
broker, yeah.
Okay, got it.
But he really is credited for making it happen down here. I mean, he just signed Marion Goodman to 30,000 square feet, a couple blocks away. So it's crazy what's going on down here.
Wow.
Here now for 10 years as Patrick Parrish Gallery. And I do art and design, but I started out as just strictly vintage design. And then at the old space, I started selling contemporary design. And the vintage design paid for the contemporary. In fact, the contemporary was more like just, I was losing money on that.
Mm.
But it slowly just started shifting until I was making, as taste changed, and I was making much more money on selling contemporary design. And then as this neighborhood has changed, I've been showing more art, because I'm an artist, so it's my background. So I feel comfortable with that. I really love working with artists. I like working with designers too, and I don't really separate the two, and that's a whole nother discussion. But it's been a lot of fun to be here and see this neighborhood go from me being one of like 5 galleries to now there has to be, if you include Chinatown, there has to be 70 galleries, maybe more.
Wow. And do you appreciate that quote unquote competition, or do you welcome it because I carry different stuff and so it doesn't matter? We're not really competing.
I never thought like that. Like when we were on Duane Street, there were four other antique stores right next to us, and it brought people in, and it was
Yeah.
that it, if my biggest competitor, and I say that with quotations, moved right next door to me, it would be good because
Yeah.
I'm going to meet all his or her clients. I'm
Right.
going to see what they're doing. I'm going to have an intimate view and who's their shipper and what's going on. You'll just learn so much.
Sure.
And I'm confident enough in my eye and what I buy and what I like that I'm not saying I don't have any competition. We all have competition, but I just do my thing and I'm not really worried about what the competition's doing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I've
Nice
said
to know what
before.
they're doing because I can learn. Sorry to over talk over you. It's
No.
nice to know what they're doing and to learn from them, but that's why I see it as learning from them, not being scared of them.
Well, I mean, I've said before, like Coke needs Pepsi, right? It's a healthy relationship, you know? I know you said it would be a different conversation, but we could have it. How does the relationship differ and or overlap with artists versus designers, for example?
I was at and I'll paraphrase what she said, but I was at the Loewe, which if for those of you who don't know, Loewe is a big fashion brand. They're known for their bags. It looks like it's spelled low, but it's Loewe. They're Spanish. They're like the Spanish Hermes,
Right.
huge company, incredibly expensive stuff. And I think his name's Jonathan Anderson, started for them this craft prize, and I forget what year it's in. That's fourth or fifth year. But I've had a couple artists be in it before, and I had an artist this year, Liam Lee, who's in it. He was one of the finalists. They had 2,700 applications. They narrowed it down to 30, and Liam, they only gave three awards, like two honorable mentions, and the big, 50,000 euro prize. But he was definitely probably in the top five because he was on the cover of the catalog with the other winners. So it must have been very close.
Right.
But anyway, Fran Lebowitz was there, and Jonathan Anderson was showing her around, and she's like, he was telling me this is design. I'm like, all right, what's the difference between art and design? I think of design as something useful. And she goes, every one of these pieces in here is completely unuseful. So I consider them art. And what she meant was there's vases that'll never have flowers in them. There's chairs, which Liam designed, that will really never be sat in. There's jewelry that'll never be worn. And so is that design or is it art? And is the person that made it, are they an artist or a designer? And again, if someone wants to identify as designer, I respect that. But if someone who makes just chairs for sitting wants to say they're an artist, I'm totally fine with that as well.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think the discussion of what is art and design and kind of the way the more powerful art world kind of pushes design to the side. I mean, it's silly to me because I
Right.
don't the process unless you're a mechanical engineer and you're designing seating for trains. I mean, I that's so technical that maybe that's not art. But if you look at Italian trains from the 50s and American trains from the 30s, it is art. They're beautifully designed and they're sculptural and they're interesting to look at and feel good to sit in. So again, I have a hard time making a difference, and that's why I say, what is the difference? Is a chair a piece of art or is a chair a piece of design? Why can't it be both?
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting. I didn't have this like as a note to bring up or to ask you about, but the conversation so far has sparked this in the fact that like you look at old architecture, right? Especially in your neighborhood, Soho, Tribeca,
Beautiful.
all those like cast iron buildings that are there and all of the speaking of things I've seen on the treadmill, that there's an architect on Architectural Digest YouTube page, and he goes through New York and just talks about all the buildings and all the
Oh,
designs.
cool.
It's amazing. He's an architect. He looks like he's been on the block for a minute and seems like, but he does it in a concise way. So as I say this as an aside, go check out those videos on AD's YouTube. It's a guy with a beard. I think he's got glasses. And it's just fascinating. And he kind of goes neighborhood by neighborhood in certain circumstances, and then others he just talks about style, and but all architecture based, obviously. But you look at old buildings and how ornate they used to be designed, and or even homes, with crown molding and chair molding, or chair rails or whatever you call it, mid wall. Those details are not present today. And do you find that the lack of that kind of ornate detail stems from, it can't be just less is more as far as a design aesthetic is concerned? Is it lazy design? Is it margin chasing? You know, what's your opinion? Because I've never really talked about this very much, but I think about it all the time.
I mean, my wife is an architect, so I know a little bit about it, and it's definitely tastes have changed.
Sure.
Also, just the to replicate a Victorian house with all the gingerbread work and all that woodwork and the craftsmanship, you can do it, but it's so expensive. It would
Right.
be not feasible to do for a regular average middle class family, which those Victorian houses were. For it's just the cost is nuts. So you have billionaires doing it, but they're not concerned about resale value or. But if you're a developer and building a house, yeah, it's easy, just plain sheetrock and plain gray floors and low ceilings and cheap lighting. I mean, it's like it is chasing that the buck, which is sad. In New York and in Chicago, and I don't spend as much time in LA, but you can see beautiful. There are people that are doing beautiful work and with a lot of attention to detail, but it's for the 1% of the 1%. I mean,
Yeah.
there's not a lot of interesting stuff being done for middle America, and I don't know if they would want it anyway.
Right. Yeah. Interesting. Interesting. I wanted to ask you, just to kind of backtrack a little bit on based on your location. Having an art gallery, I would assume, how do I put this? I would assume location isn't as important as maybe, um, I don't know. They always say location, location, location when you're a retail store. You know what I mean? Or anything really. I mean, I guess a hotel would also fit that. But um, I just feel like art is different, right? Like, so you could easily be a destination location based on, if I want to find this artist's work, I got to go find where it's distributed. And if you think about housing for artists, usually the up and coming neighborhood is filled with artists because of the cheaper rent and, starving artists, that kind of mentality. But you're an art gallery. So does that sort of fit the same scenario in the sense of location could be determined by destination type of situation, or?
I think that I think location is important, and it's been a boon to my business to have so many other galleries around.
Right. But you were the first.
Yeah, one of the first for sure. It's I think both are cool, and I think of like going to Tokyo and trying to find this place, and you can't read the street signs. And I was
Yeah.
there before it was even Google Maps, and it's like trying to find a little place that sells this specific selvage denim, and it's like, and it creates a kind of mystique about it. So
Mm.
I think that is interesting. So I think it goes both. My answer is it goes both ways. It's great to have so many galleries around me, but it's also great to be discovered. And I'm kind of low key on the block. I don't have a big sign. It's very subtle.
Yeah.
And I have people, it's crazy. Just the other day, I had someone come in. It's like, oh my gosh, this gallery's amazing. Who's the architect? Who is this? And who this? And and how long have you been here? Did you just open? I'm like, no, I've been here 10 years. I got the space 10 years ago. And they're like, what? I live only a block away. I've never seen. I don't know what to tell you, man.
Yeah, it's like watching a movie for the 10th time. You're just going to notice something new every time.
Yeah, so it's fun that people still are discovering discovering us. And,
Yeah.
and then something we'll talk about too is, you really, to get to the secret watch shop, you really have to
Yeah.
discover.
You got to be asking a lot of questions.
Yeah.
Well, fair enough. Yeah, we'll talk about that for sure. Um, yeah, it just, Margiela, I think of as the company that wants to never be around the competition and
Yeah.
create like a location off the beaten path or
Yeah, absolutely. But then people fall. But I will say Margello was, I mean, like when they were in the West Village, yeah, they were in the kind of the West Village that wasn't the coolest part yet, but they were still in the West Village. But now it's, I mean, people follow them. Yeah, and I love that West Village store.
yeah.
So I agree. It can work. It can work either way. I would prefer to kind of do a hybrid, kind of like I am now. I'm there, but where are you?
Yeah.
So there's enough people that are going to come down here anyway. Because if you're just out in the middle of nowhere, it's kind of hard, especially these days with the internet and with just everything being so high speed and so access to information so quickly. It's
Hmm.
I want interior designers, architects, and collectors to come into the gallery, but it doesn't happen as much as it used to 10 years ago. I mean, it's like crazy how I would say most things are bought through JPEGs.
Oh, no way.
And 10 years ago, nothing was bought through a JPEG, or through the website or through an email. So
Yeah.
I like it to be, I like being in a place that's dense that people want to come to because it's more likely that I'll actually get them in the door.
It's
And that's
funny.
when I really sell them when they're here.
Yeah. I thought you were going to take that to the other direction of like, I'm subdued on the block. This guy a block away doesn't know I'm there. But because of the internet, it's like you can run, but you can't hide because of the internet. I thought that was kind of where you were going with that. But as far as buying through a JPEG, I was going to ask you about this later, but I saw your work on First Dibs even too. Like, so I guess you sell through them as well. What is that relationship like?
Um,
Is it easy? Like, how do you know what I mean?
it's First Dibs is an interesting company, and I've been working with them for a long time. I've done very well in there. It's there's a lot of problems with it, but I sell things, so I'm not going to complain too much. But it's like if you typed in, Pierre Jean chair and clicked on one of my Pierre Jean chairs, it's not going to say Patrick Parrish Gallery.
Right.
Now, if you type on Jean chairs First Dibs, my name might come up, but they don't. They want our stuff as dealers. They want our stuff, but they don't want to promote us unless they're promoting us in an editorial way because they
Sure.
want everything to look the same and it to be. It's like if you imagine if the old Barney's, there was no like Prada section, there was no Gucci section. It was just Prada and Gucci just mixed all together. Like they don't even have labels. It's like, well,
Right.
it's not. They want it just to be a shopping experience. They don't want it to be a dealer's experience.
Well, yeah, because if you buy something on First Dibs, they want you coming back to First Dibs, not leading a breadcrumb trail to where else to buy better other stuff.
Or to come directly in to Patrick Parrish and shop directly.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
People all the time try to get us to go off the platform. Yesterday, I wrote a guy, he's writing his email, writing 5 emails, breaking up his email into 5 different things. I'm like, dude, First Dibs reads every single email. They have an algorithm. You're already busted. And I'm not, we're very strict with going through them because if you try to go around it, you're just going to get busted. And they have an incredible reach. So that's good. But we're
Yeah.
also an artsy, which full disclosure, my wife was one of the original, couple dozen employees there. And Artsy's been great too, a lot, especially for art. Um, and then we have our own website and we have our mini Instagrams. So I'm all for it. We just designed a new website, our new website just came out.
Cool.
which it's done kind of as a legacy website because I'm negotiating my lease right now. And I was thinking, what if I don't get the lease again? And so I wanted the new website to be literally everything we've ever sold or
Right.
ever had, and lots more artist bios and stuff. So if you haven't checked out the new website, check it out. It takes a little, once you get the hang of navigating around, it's a lot of fun to look at.
Well, interesting because I'm sure that helps with SEO. Having everything ever sold and all the, the back
Yes.
catalog thing, you know. Um, how do you come to represent artists, or do they come to you, or both?
Um, Both. I will say some of my most, it's funny, some of the people I've done the best with, I found through Instagram since, and we're starting from when Instagram started. But, but even those Instagram introductions came through other artists and designers who said, check this person's work out. So I would say I find most artists and designers through other artists and designers I'm either friends with or work with.
Right.
Someone, unfortunately, someone's cold calling me or sending me their portfolio or photos of things just without any context. I would say, I won't say it never works, but it maybe works 1 out of 1,000 times.
Right. Right.
Unfortunately, I mean, I look at them all, but it's just it's like a friend of a friend is always better, and
Right.
always I'll really, really look at it. If it's like, if you sent me, check this artist out, I would immediately look at it and I would contact the artist and said, Wesley asked me to look. And then, you're doing great stuff. Keep me in the loop. Or say, Wesley, they're incredible. Do you have their cell phone number? I want to call them.
Well, before I forget, I'll mention an acquaintance slash friend, Casey O'Connell. She does these paintings that are really whimsical and fun, but they can also be kind of dark, which is really interesting. I could tell you her whole backstory offline, but I want to actually have her on the podcast. So I'll let her tell her own story, but that could be some synergy there for you both, I think, for sure. So if I forget to tell you, either after this or offline, what have you, just please remind me.
Okay,
Um,
great.
yeah.
But that's how it usually happens, is
Yeah.
through other artists and designers.
Well, let me ask you this. Are you restricted at all by price point of art that you sell? Because like if somebody's selling stuff for $500 rather than $500,000, like I don't, how does price point work to even be featured on your walls?
I'm yeah, I mean, my wife just texted me. She just sold a light um, to an art advisor friend of ours, but they just sold a lamp for $150,000 for a lamp. That's a lot of money for it's not a vintage lamp, it's a contemporary lamp. And that's crazy. I really have any lamps that are that expensive. But it's just about where I am and what my gallery is and what I'm interested in. It tends to be things under, I don't know. We just sent a quote for a desk for $80,000, but I would say that's even unusual for us. Most things are in the under 20,000.
Okay.
The majority of that is under 5,000. I just did a show in Chicago with amazing, amazing artist Eric Oglander at Expo Chicago, and we sold 50 pieces, and they were priced $550 to $2,500, and it was very refreshing for a lot of the dealers and galleries, people that work at galleries, directors and assistants, because they could actually buy a piece, and everyone
Yeah.
was, this is so nice. This stuff's amazing and it's affordable. And with Eric, it's a slow burn because he makes things out of discarded materials and natural materials, things he finds in the woods. So how much can you charge for a briar, an actual briar on a little wood stand with vintage, indigo fabric wrapped over it? I mean, it can't be it can't be 50,000, but it eventually will be 50,000, but just probably not anytime soon. Anyway, I'm just saying I try to do a slow burn and get the work out there, because once the work is out there, more people see the work, more people want the work. And if you immediately like everything's 5,000, well, you don't sell anything. I mean, it's
Right.
kind of the horrible analogy of, the drug dealer giving the first hit out for free.
Yeah, yeah.
You have it, you want it, and then you tell everyone about it. And so with art, it's a little bit like that. I want to get it out, get it into people's houses, and for other collectors, even other dealers to see it and go, what is that? Where'd you get that?
Yeah. What are your
So
out? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
of hours, we're open Monday through Saturday. Most galleries are closed on Monday, but because just coming out of the design world, everyone is open on Monday. So we're open on Mondays and just closed on Sundays.
Now, are you there all the time?
I'm generally here. You can count on me being here noon to 5.
Got it.
Sometimes I'm here 10 to 8, but that's my
Sure.
general.
How often are you dealing with international clients?
All the time.
Really?
Yeah. I think this desk I mentioned before, I think the guy's in Dubai.
Okay.
A lot, I would say a lot with Parisian decorators, people, London, mostly the United States. But yeah, I would say like London, Paris, Germany, LA, Chicago, New York, Miami.
Yeah. Now, obviously, you book appointments as well, I would take it.
Oh yeah, if someone wants to like a tour, yeah, sure. We have people do that sometimes. But unfortunately, it's not that it's not as many people actually walking through the door as I would like. But I say that when I got here, rushing to get here, there was a tour group of 25 people in here. So
That's crazy. What what do you do to advertise or promote your gallery? Do you at all at this point?
well, the website does it. I have my personal Instagram, which is Mondo Blago, which comes out of my blog, which was Mondo Blago, which still to this day I get people walking up to me. It's like Mondo. I'm not exaggerating. Mondo Blago changed my life. Mondo Blago, the whole reason I'm a designer. There's a
Really?
guy Harry Kuriev who found my blog and he came to me from Russia. I actually helped him get his papers to get into Russia. And I always knew he was going to do something great. But anyway, he was like, your blog is the reason I wanted to design furniture. He just signed with Carpenter's Workshop Gallery and just had a book come out with Rizzoli. And this is all within like 8 years. And and Carpenter's Workshop Gallery is the one of the top, if the couple got Friedman Binda, where my wife works, and Carpenter's Workshop. They're like the top design galleries in the world. And it's just funny to see his trajectory. And I always knew he was going to do something great. But that was from my blog. So my blog still has a lot of influence.
Right.
Instagram, a little bit, not much, as much. Because with my blog, I have a huge library. I
Yeah.
have like 3 libraries, but I would never post anything on my blog if it was already on the internet. So I was looking for stuff. And again, this is going back 15 years. I would
Sure.
look for something. All right. And it could be by someone famous. Is this Charles Eames chair on the internet? Oh, it's not. Then I'll do that. But I mean, it was also a lot of obscure designers and artists and people that became more famous.
Wow.
It's that got a lot that spread the word a lot. First Dibs spreads the word, Artsy spreads the word, Instagram spreads the word, but a very big one is doing fairs. So doing design fairs and art fairs, doing, Design Miami Basel, or doing the Fog Fair in San Francisco, or Art Expo in Chicago. All fairs we do, you meet a lot of people, a lot of curators, you meet collectors, dealers, press. So art fairs are a big way of getting the word out there.
Now, when you say you're doing those art fairs, is that you setting up like a booth? Kind of like a trade
Yes.
show? Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Sorry. Can you repeat the gentleman's name you just said, the Russian guy?
Harry Nureyev.
Okay. I I did what I shouldn't do and talked over the first name, I think, the first time. So I just want to make it clear.
Definitely, he's very tied up in the fashion world as well. He's I don't want to say hilarious, but he's got a great sense of humor. He makes chandeliers out of Bic pens. I mean,
Whoa.
he's a real cool, interesting guy.
Yeah, I definitely want to look them up or look him up. You've dealt with a lot of famous people. Um, are they normally coming in or sending their assistants?
Um, Both. I would say these days, even less actually coming in. Like at
Mhm.
over on Duane Street, there was it'd be a lot, not a lot. I mean, it was always fun. Like Wesley Snipes walks in your gallery, it's really, really cool. Or Jennifer Aniston's in your booth, you know. Um, but that's more of an LA thing. But we get both. But usually, you're not dealing with we're not dealing with Jerry Seinfeld to buy a thin edge cabinet. We're dealing with his decorator.
Wow, that's cool.
We find out where things are going, you know, because there's a lot of safety and security, so we don't know. But with the bills of lading, we see most things don't ever go to the actual address. But when we do get an actual address, we're definitely Googling it to see the incredible place it's going. And that's always fun. And then you can figure out who it is. But we just do that as sport.
Right. Yeah.
We're not stalking anyone. It's fun to see where this stuff ends up.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no, 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 no. I get it. I get it. Totally. Well, let's talk about the secret watch shop.
Let's do. Yeah. So I've been a collector of watches for over 25 years. And I started out with watches. I mean, I had swatches in high school and I was really into swatches but no one in my family had watches. My grandfather was a photographer and he was always developing things. So he never wore any metal because it just like chemicals just ate everything up. So that's why he never had a watch. My dad is a marine biologist. You would think he would have great diving watches, but he hated to be encumbered by a watch. So he never had any watches other than, Casios and stuff. Um, but when I started buying and selling design and going to antique fairs and flea markets and thrift stores looking for stuff, I started looking for watches too. And I remember a friend of mine here who's a photographer, this guy, Jeff Spear. I got invited over. I sold him this amazing easel that I bought at Brimfield and I asked him to deliver it. He asked if we could deliver it, when we ended up having a drink. And he's really well-known photographer, specializing in photographing book jackets mostly. He does everything, but with this designer Chip Kidd, he's done almost every one of Chip Kidd's booked us photography for the book covers. But anyway, he was wearing Accutron, Bulova Accutron astronaut, and I was like, "What is that watch?" It was just
Yeah.
like, "Where's the crown? What's going on?" And he told me the whole history about the Gemini pilots and the SST pilots wearing it, and I was just hooked. So that's what I wanted to find. And at Brimfield, I remember I found one for $350 and immediately bought it. And that got me going down and said, okay, I want things related to space. So I started the guy, Chuck Maddox, what was the name? Anyway, he was one of the early guys like documenting, and again, we're talking 20 years ago, documenting watches that had been in space. And so I started, finding them from the Seiko Pogues to obscure, what's the other brands, some obscure other brands, just trying to find the stuff I could afford. And then finally, I was able to afford a Speedmaster, and I got the Speedmaster. And space then led me, you can only go so far in that. And space led me to flight. And so got really interested in pilots' watches. Not so much the military, but like commercial pilots, like GMTs. I love the idea of a GMT. Again, I traveled a lot. So a lot of complex watches, a lot of chronographs and GMTs. And then finally into racing and Hoyer and the brands and Inencar. And not lastly, and then finally into diving. And I ignored time only dive watches because I was like, I thought they were boring, to be honest with you,
Oh, funny.
until I started realizing how much technology and science and engineering goes into making a watch that can withstand the pressures and being underwater. I
Mhm.
mean, wear a regular watch today, and a drop of water gets in the stem and it's ruined. And these are watches going down thousands of feet for that were meant to save people's. I mean, it was a tool. If you didn't have that watch, you could die. I mean, the same thing with the Speedmasters and these pilot watches. They didn't have an iPhone. They didn't have, there was no phone, there was a watch.
Right.
I think people forget that these were very, very important tools. And so that's what I was into, is these tool watches, not meant to be worn, with a suit to work. I mean, people didn't buy a GMT to wear in the
Right.
early days. They didn't buy a GMT to go to work. It was gigantic. I mean, I'm wearing a Altavia GMT. This is a huge watch for the 60s.
Right.
Um, so dive watches, I'm really into Aquastar and of course Rolex and Sandos and some other cool obscure brands. And then finally now, since I've opened a watch shop, I have people asking me for Cartier or dress watches, and I kind of poo-pooed. Not, I don't want to say poo-pooed. I just wasn't interested. But I'm finding myself really these days interested in smaller men's dress watches and gold watches. So I never, for my wife wanted for birthday very specific. She gave me a couple years to find it. She wanted an 1803 matte black dial, president. And I was like, why does she want this gold watch? But anyway, that put me down a journey of learning all about vintage presidents, and that was fascinating. And then we got to see a lot of them and was trying them on. I'm like, I love these watches.
Yeah.
And another thing, I was thinking, okay, got this Daytona here, and I've got this King Midas here, which I have them both over here. I said, okay, if we melt the Daytona, I'm left with zero value. Zero. There's nothing. The steel's worth pennies. If I melt this, King Midas, left with $9,000 in gold.
Right.
Anyone in the world will give me for that.
Mhm. Right.
Just the value gold watches, and we're seeing it very rapidly change. But I mean, 5 years ago, no one would wear a two-tone watch. 10 years ago, no one would wear. I mean, a gold watch. Are you kidding? No one.
Right.
People plating. I remember when people were plating gold Daytonas so they looked like steel Daytonas.
Oh, really?
Crazy as that? Yeah, in
That's
LA, they would take that. They would plate it because no one wanted a gold Daytona. I mean, now it's like it seems so ridiculous, but that was what people were doing.
wow. So obviously you on the heels of having your gallery and you're selling furniture, stuff like that downstairs, right? Like how did the secret watch shop come about? Were you just finally like, well, I would really just want to curate a space for this stuff? Or was it like what was the genesis of actually having like the physical footprint there?
Space, yeah. So like right before the pandemic, um, my wife, well, no, for years my wife kept saying she'd see my watch and she was like, "Do you have those insured? Where are you putting those? Do we have where's your safe?" I'm like, "I don't have a safe. I'm put, hide them in my shoes, in the closet." And she goes, you need a safe and you need to get things appraised. So I had a friend who's worked at Christie's in London and came to New York all the time. And he said, "Oh, I'll introduce you to this guy named Eric Wind at Christie's. He's the watch expert." So I was like, great. So I started an email conversation with Eric, and I was thinking about selling some Universal Genèves when they were getting popular. And anyway, we just kind of struck up a email friendship. And then I said, "Do you appraise what?" Oh no, then he left Christie's. And then I said, "Do you appraise watches?" And he said, "Yeah, I do." So we worked a deal. I met with him. He looked at the watches. I was very pleasantly surprised that I didn't have many dogs in there, and really surprised at how much the values had changed because I wasn't really paying attention to the watch market. I
Mhm.
just bought stuff I liked. And so I was like, oh, wow, that's crazy. You know, paid 2,500 for that and it's worth how much? I was
You're
like,
like, my wife was right. I do need to get a safe.
so, and through that, I met this guy Jed from Watch Safari, who was got called out on your podcast a couple of weeks ago, and he was the one doing the physical appraisal, like checking serial numbers, condition, loom, and everything. So he spent about 3 or 4 days here at the gallery, and we became friends because of that.
Cool.
He's helped me a lot. He's like encyclopedic knowledge about any type of watch. A tiny Omega dress watch from the 20s, he'll know every single detail about it, and then you know all the way up to the you know Longines pilot watches to any, of course, Rolex, but it's just like encyclopedic knowledge. So it's great to talk to him about watches.
Yeah.
But so so then the pandemic hit, and I started listening to podcasts and started getting the watches. Like a lot of people, it just renewed interest in the watches. And so for those like basically 2 years, I just was a deep dive into learning more about what I had and talking to Jed and talking to Eric. And um, my wife said, you should really, you should open sell some watches. You got so many watches now. You should sell some watches in the gallery. And I was like, well, I don't really want to sell the watch. She goes, come on, it's like I had a lot of watches. And so I said, well, that's a good idea. And I said, well, I almost did that 10 years ago. And I had a space, a signed lease, everything for this cool little space on Duane Street, which is now Hugh Jackman's coffee shop. And it would have been the perfect watch shop. But because of that, I mentioned earlier, my business partner being a bad boy, I had to drop that and gave the lease to my friends. So I kind of wondered what would have happened if I had opened a watch store, 13 years ago, what I would be doing, and what watches I would have or not have.
Sure.
And so I said, well, where am I going to do it? I think I hate when I go into a design store, and especially not in an a gallery where there's some little case with some watches sitting out. I think that's so cheesy. She's like, I'm not talking about that. You got enough space, build an actual room. I'm like, where am I going to build the room? And again, she's like, downstairs under the skylight. I'm like, oh yeah, okay.
I love how she's like leading you down the road of like what's already in her head. Like she should have just like
I if I yeah, I just when I listen to her, I do very well. When I don't listen to her, I'm coming back to it anyway. But yes, she's very
so
smart.
funny.
But anyway, so we, through another friend of mine, hired his contractor, and we built a wall downstairs. So I have a skylight where I'm sitting now, and we built this translucent plastic wall. So it's very architectural because so it matches the space. You can see the metal studs, and its light comes through. So I would say if I asked 10 people that have been here 20 times, like, what's new with this room? They go, nothing. No one even notices because they still see the light. So that was very good. So it's hidden.
Right.
Um, and my friends at USM hooked me up, and we designed this beautiful showcase. And I was like, okay, I'm doing this.
Yeah.
But it's hard. It's hard to have a watch shop and a gallery because every watch appointment is an hour, and I've got other stuff to do. So I said, I can't be open to the public. It's got to be by appointment. I can manage that. And for a lot of other reasons, I don't want it be you just walk off the street. So
Right. Right.
safety, for security. So you have to make an appointment, and DM me on Instagram or my email, and then I meet people, and it's been really amazing the people I've met, and kind of the roads I've gone down. Different. I thought I would be dealing with all like watch collectors, and very little of that. I'm dealing mostly with like fashion people in fashion.
Mm.
Most interesting to me, artists. That hear through the gallery grapevine, oh, this guy has watches, and and again, I love dealing with artists, so it's fun to turn them on to watches as well. So it's been really good, and I've got things like this help, but the word has been slowly spreading, and people are like, well, why'd you name it the Secret Watch Shop if you want people to know? I said, well, I didn't name it. My 7-year-old son Clyde named it. Heard Alex and I talking about it, and we thought he wasn't listening. And then we're having a glass of wine or something, and he's building a Lego in the other room. He goes, Dada, Dada, it sounds like you're opening a secret watch shop. And I'm like, that's the name, Secret Watch Shop.
That's amazing.
So it should be more like the watch speakeasy, because it's hard to find, it's hard to get into, but we want you to come and then serve you drinks. So I want you to find me, and I want it to be fun to find me, and I would love to sell you a watch once you get here, or
Yeah.
not.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. I love it. And it's such a cool space. And I think you mentioned it, but like the case lines that you have the watches in, whatever the case is.
USM.
USM. Yeah. For those who are, for those who aren't familiar, like I know what it looks like because I've been in your space, but how do you describe what it looks like given that we're audio only?
Yeah, the actual showcase.
Yeah.
USM is a Swiss company, and it's modular furniture. So it's basically like this ball that's threaded in, I think, 6 directions, and then these standard like
Steel
poles
pipes. Yeah. Yeah.
screw into it, and it's just I think I shouldn't. It's designed sometime from the post-war late early 50s, I think.
Yeah.
Someone can check me on that, but it's Swiss, so it is precise. It's beautiful, and it's very utilitarian. It's actually function over form. It's very functional, and there's no. It's not like, right, because of the balls and the way it is. It's got a softness to it, but
Hmm.
it's all metal. To give you an idea, all the Rolex headquarters are furnished with USM,
Oh, really?
proprietary green color. And I only know this because my friend told me that. But yeah, it's a color that only Rolex gets, which is
Wow.
so it's perfect for the watches.
Sure.
Yeah.
Do you have a Grail watch?
That's a tough one, because I like everything now. I mean, I'm wearing wear a Cartier tank, and then I'll wear some giant, Breitling GMT that's 48 millimeters. I don't I what I hate is when someone says, and if you've said this, I apologize in advance. Oh, I can't wear that. I've got tiny wrists.
Oh,
Uh,
right.
I can't wear that. My wrists are too big. I said, man, I always tell the story. I got obsessed with watching Miami Vice, the old Miami Vices with Don Johnson.
Don Johnson. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, Don Johnson had to fight, Crockett and Tubbs. So Crockett had to fight this bodyguard, and so Tubbs could go in his giant big Mercedes like limo thing. And this guy's a mountain of a man, gigantic, like bodybuilder type guy, and he's like puts his arms up, and what does he have on his wrist? A Cartier tank. And this guy's wrists were the size of my neck.
Right.
All about your attitude. I find that people say that I can't wear this, I can't wear this. You can wear it, you don't want to wear it.
Right.
And that's
Right.
fine too, but don't tell me you can't, because you can. It's all about your attitude. So Grail watch is hard because there's so many um watches I would like. I'm trying to think.
I mean, I'm the same way, so it's not a fair question because I can't even answer it really. I mean, I've got my Grail chronograph. I've got my Grail dress watch. You know what I
Right,
mean?
right. Yeah, that Breguet dive watch that came up at Phillips would be pretty Grail as far as dive watches go. I like that. I'll say a watch that I don't, that's kind of a Grail to me that I don't have. It's not like I mean, it's obtainable. It's hard to find, is a Puller Router Sub.
Mm.
I love those, and I've never been able to find a real one. I've had fake ones, or but I've never been able to find a real one. So yeah, I would take a Polar Otter sub.
So the last time I saw you, which forgive me, when was that? December, I guess.
So
Why did I write Asheville, North Carolina in my phone?
oh, Asheville, North Carolina. Because I my grandparents moved to Western North Carolina and built a house in the 70s. So, and the family has been there. My great grandmother bought like 200 acres on top of this mountain in the basically in the teens, early 20s. And
Wow.
properties all stayed within the family. So it's just family houses. And so it's really great. So I've been going down there since before I was born, literally pictures of my mom pregnant down there. It's just a part of the country I really love and go
Yeah.
down a lot. But I don't know why, yeah, why it came up other than I go down there every year and I love it.
I think you must have posted something about it in your stories or something. And I was just like, oh my God, I got to talk Asheville with you because I went to high school there for 2 years.
Oh, you did?
I did, yeah.
Oh, well, then you know all about Asheville. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that place has my heart, man. Like, I love that place. I always said if I ever moved back to North Carolina, I would move back to Asheville.
I could move to Asheville right now. In fact, my wife would move to Asheville tomorrow if we were going.
Right, right.
And we love New York, but it's a grind here. It's so beautiful. What I like about Asheville and all of Western North Carolina is it's super beautiful. It's culturally very rich,
Sure.
starting from the turn of the century, music, crafts, furniture. It's
Even cuisine. I think they had the first vegan restaurant in the nation, if I'm not mistaken.
and the beer and the bike
Hmm.
and the mountain biking or climbing or hiking. They revere the outdoors. The national parks and the wilderness areas are just it's like everywhere is a national park.
Yeah.
Just it's yeah, it's I mean everyone knows about it, and so many expats from San Francisco, Chicago, New York are moving down there, and
Yeah.
I actually like that. Some of the locals complain about that and the traffic, but it's still that the town they have very strict historic rules, so like downtown looks like 1930 still. They won't allow chains in, or they used to not allow chains in. So I don't know. I don't have anything bad to say about Asheville. I love it down there.
Yeah.
That's cool. I went to high school there.
Yeah, I miss it dearly, and my wife and I were there a few years ago, like a blip on the radar kind of weekend thing, and we stayed at the Grove Park, which I think I'd only stayed there one other time in my life, and that was when I was like 7 years old. So those huge fireplaces inside of there are like a lot smaller now than they were when I was seven. But
Still pretty big. They're
yeah.
still pretty good. That was all. My wife and I got married there.
Oh, no way. Okay.
Grove Park Inn, and we picked it well because it was Asheville, but because think about that building. I think it's 19. Let's just say it's 1905, but it's designed by the Roycrofters, which were from New York. It's an arts and crafts like collaborative, almost some would say a cult, but that building was cutting edge. That was like the most modern, everything in there was cutting edge in 1905. And people go, what? But we picked it because it's very architecturally significant, and the designs, the furniture, lighting, pottery, all the associated crafts that furnish the hotel, all very significant for the time. So it's great down there.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. Did you get married inside or outside?
We got married. We were gonna get married on one of the decks, like can you walk in kind of where the restaurants are, but
Yep.
they were scared it was gonna rain.
Oh
So they
no.
upgraded us to the golf club, which is in this incredible, again, 20s stone building with the golf course. So we had the view and the golf course and the kids could run around. It was great. So we lucked out with that.
Oh,
Oh,
good
good
for
for
you.
you. I
It's like
played that.
5 times the price to rent it, but they didn't want to deal with the rain, so they put us in there, and it didn't. There wasn't a drop of rain.
Oh, funny. That's
It
so
didn't even
funny.
get cloudy. It's weird.
Well, I played golf for both years for my high school team there in Asheville, but I never played the Grove Parks course. So
It looks pretty interesting. It's pretty.
I love it. I love that course. And now I'm blanking on who designed it. Oh shoot, I don't know. Anyway, do you play? Do you play golf?
I mean,
Okay.
I would like to, but I mean, I would just hit around, but
Yeah.
I'm not a golfer.
Yeah. So, I'd been itching to play this golf course for 25 years. So finally, when we were there, I was like, babe, I'm taking my clubs. I don't care what you say. Like, you can go. She had a conference there, coincidentally. So, you know, she was off doing her thing and I did mine. But yeah, had an absolute blast. Got paired up with like a couple of guys that like I don't know, like went to Clemson, and it was just fun.
Nice. And this course nice.
It's beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. I'll have to send you a clip of one of my drives because you get the mountain echo from it off the club face.
Really?
It's unbelievable. Yeah, I'll text it to you. Um, well, dude, this has been super fun. Um, I believe that's the sweatshirt you and I discussed.
This is a sweatshirt. And it was 40 something degrees this morning in New York in the middle of May.
Really? He was 80 last week.
Going down to 45 tonight. So I'm not only wearing your sweatshirt because it's cold, but also obsessed with it as well. Yeah.
Well, thanks, man. So for those listening, Patrick and I were visiting with one another in the secret watch shop in December, as previously mentioned. And Patrick looks at me and says, "You know what I want?" I was like, "What's that?" And he's like, "I want your sweatshirt, but I don't want a hood on it." And I was like, "Okay, fair enough." And incidentally, he had an ashtray that I was obsessing over. So abracadabra, he got a sweatshirt with no hood on it, as did I, because why wouldn't I make two? So we're in rarefied air right now with
I didn't
with
know
the
it's like
sweatshirt.
this is like a prototype. You know what? I don't know if you know this, but the cuffs, do you see how the cuffs are tight
Yeah,
and they're long?
yeah,
So they push whatever watch you're wearing down. So you're always like, giving a little bling, which I like.
yeah.
It can't go under.
Well, the other thing too is sometimes,
I
yeah,
I like it. Always like know what time it is.
yeah, that's great. Yeah, so I think due to the prototyping of said sweatshirt, we might get one of these in the fall and maybe another color or two. So,
Cool.
do you have any color preferences other than black?
I like darker colors, so like a really dark gray or dark blues would be amazing.
Yeah. Are you familiar with the blues that I currently make in like my t-shirts?
Yes.
Okay. Is that blue enough? Or are you thinking dark navy?
Like more navy, like almost like a cobalt
I
or a little lighter than that, right?
Yeah, they're not quite French blue, but it's called a state blue. But it was funny yesterday. Um, I was thinking about doing a navy sweatshirt just because, like, I didn't do navy t-shirts because everybody and their brother makes a navy t-shirt, and I kind of wanted some colors that I knew would sell decent, but not be derivative. Even though black and white's derivative, but who doesn't need a good black and white t-shirt? Um, So yeah, that's kind of the motivation there. But like, I'm kind of craving personally a navy sweatshirt, like a darker blue.
Yeah, that would be good.
So maybe we do that. But I appreciate you wearing it, and I'm stoked to hear that you like it. So
Love it. Love it. Love it.
sweet. So there's a little tidbit for Easter eggs for those for the fall. Patrick, thanks, man. And yeah, like I said, I hate that I missed you this last trip, but I'll definitely see you in October. Um, how often are you in Chicago? Because Wind Up is in Chicago in July.
I went to grad school in Chicago, but I hadn't been there in years. But this trip for Expo Chicago, I mean, I plan on applying every year to Expo Chicago. I loved it. I loved it. I loved the city. It was great. Everything about it.
Now, when is that?
That was just late April.
Okay. So you got another 11 months to go then for that. So that's cool. But if you feel like coming to Wind Up, I can't decide if I'm going or not. And if you want me to do that introduction, just let me know.
That would be great. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'll do that. Great. Patrick, thanks, man. This was super fun. Always great to talk to you. And yeah, we'll do it again.
Sounds good, Wesley. Thank you.
Okay, buddy. Yeah, I'll chat with you soon. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Okay, bye. This wraps up this episode of the Standard Age podcast. If you like what you heard, I'd love it if you'd share it with a friend or two. And if you have a moment, please rate and review the show, as it helps others discover these episodes. It absolutely helps far more than you realize. Shout out to Jensen Reed and Super Beautiful for the theme track. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.